No, we haven't. The receptionist sighed, holding her head as if at the onset of a migraine. There was absolutely no way the doctor could do anything with you screaming at the top of your voice. You did not pass out, woman. No way. First, you were blathering, and then you started yelling and cursing. I've never seen anything like it in 15 years. It must have taken the morphine twice as long to take effect on you. Zaliha suspected some exaggeration behind this statement but did not feel like arguing. 2 hours into her visit to the gynecologist, she had come to realize that here in a patient was expected to talk only when asked to. And when you finally blacked out, it was so hard to believe that you wouldn't start shrieking again. The doctor said, let's wait till her mind is clear. If she wants to have this abortion for sure, she can still go for it afterward. We brought you here and let you sleep. And sleep indeed you did. You mean there was no. The words she had so daringly uttered in front of strangers just this afternoon felt unutterable now. Ziliha touched her belly while her eyes appealed for a consolation the receptionist was the last person on earth to grant. So she is still here. Well, you do not know yet if it is a she, the receptionist said, her voice matter of fact. But Ziliha knew. She simply did. Once on the street, despite the gathering darkness, it felt like early morning. The rain had ceased and life looked beautiful, almost manageable. Though the traffic was still a mess and the streets full of sludge, the crisp smell of the after rain gave the whole city a sacred air. Here and there, children stomped in mud puddles, taking delight in committing simple sins. If there ever was a right time to sin, it must have been at this fleeting instant. One of those rare moments when it felt like Allah not only watched over us but also cared for us. One of those moments when He felt close. It almost felt as if Istanbul had become a blissful metropolis, romantically picturesque, just like Paris, thought Zaliha. Not that she had ever been to Paris. A seagull flew close, crying a coded message she was almost on the verge of deciphering. For half a minute, Zaliha believed she was on the cutting edge of a new beginning. Why did you not let me do it, Allah? She heard herself mutter. But as soon as the words came out of her mouth, she apologized in panic to the atheist in herself. Pardon me, pardon me, pardon me. Far under the rainbow, Zaliha limped back home, clenching the box of tea glasses and broken heel, somehow feeling less dispirited than she had felt in weeks. So on that first Friday of July around 8 p.m., Zaliha came home to the slightly decrepit, high-ceilinged Ottoman konak that looked out of place amid 5 times as tall modern apartment buildings on both sides. She trudged up the curved staircase and found all the Kazansky females gathered upstairs around the wide dinner table, occupied with their meal, obviously having felt no reason to wait for her. Hello, stranger, come on in, join our supper, Banu exclaimed, craning her neck over an oven-fried crispy chicken wing. The Prophet Muhammad advises us to share our food with strangers. Her lips were glossy, so were her cheeks, as if she had taken extra time to wipe the chicken grease all over her face, including all those shiny fawn eyes of her. 12 years older and 30 pounds heavier than Zaliha, she looked less like her sister than like her mother. If she was to be believed, Banu had a bizarre digestive system that stored everything ingested, which could have been a more credible claim had she not also argued that even if it were pure water that she consumed, her body would still evolve it into fat, and thereby she could not possibly be held accountable for her weight or be asked to go on a diet. Guess what's on today's menu? Banu continued merrily as she wagged a finger at Zaliha before she clutched another chicken wing. Stuffed chicken peppers. This must be my lucky day, Zaliha said. Today's menu looks splendidly familiar. In addition to a huge chicken, there was yogurt soup, karniarik, pilaki, kadin badu kofte from the day before, turzu, newly made korek, a jar of ayran, and yes, stuffed green peppers. Zaliha instantly pulled up a chair, her hunger prevailing over her lack of enthusiasm for attending a family dinner on such a hard day's eve. Where were you, Missy? Grumbled her mother. Gulzoom, who might have been even the terrible in another life. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, knitted her eyebrows, and then turned her contorted face towards Zaliha's, as if by doing so she could read her youngest daughter's mind. So there they were, Gulzum and Zaliha, mother and daughter, scowling at each other, each ready to quarrel but reluctant to start the fight. It was Zaliha who first averted her eyes, knowing too well what a big mistake it would be to display her temper in front of her mother. She forced herself to smile and attempted an answer, albeit an indirect one. There were good discounts at the bazaar today. I bought a set of tea glasses. They are absolutely gorgeous. They have gilded stars and little spoons that match. Alas, they break so easily, murmured Sevrier, the second eldest of the Kazansky sisters and a Turkish national history teacher at a private high school. She always ate healthy, balanced meals and wore her hair in a perfectly pinned chignon that twisted at the nape of her neck without letting even a tangle of her hair loose. You have been to the bazaar? Why didn't you get any cinnamon sticks? I told you this morning we were going to have rice pudding today, and there was no cinnamon left at home to sprinkle on it. Banu frowned in between two bites of bread, but this problem occupied her for no more than a split second. Her theory of bread, fond of pronouncing which she was fond of pronouncing regularly and putting into practice all the time, was that if not given a proper amount at each and every sitting, the stomach would not know if it was full and would thereby ask for more food. For the stomach to fully comprehend its fullness, one had to eat decent portions of bread with everything. Thus, Banu would have bread with potatoes, bread with rice, bread with pasta, bread with burek, and at those times when she wanted to give her stomach a far clearer message, she would have bread with bread. Dinner without bread was a sheer sin, which Allah might forgive, but Banu definitely would not. Zaliha pursed her lips and stood silently, only now remembering the fate of the cinnamon sticks. Avoiding the question, she put a stuffed pepper on her plate. Each time she could easily tell if it was Banu or Sevrier or Faride who had prepared the peppers. If it was Banu, they turned out to be full of stuff they would have otherwise sorely lacked, including peanuts and cashews and almonds. If it was Faride, they would be full of rice. Each green pepper so ballooned it was impossible to eat without breaking. When her tendency to overstuff the peppers was added to her love for seasoning of all sorts, Faride's dolmas burst with herbs and spices. Depending on the combination, this turned out either exceptionally well or simply awful. When it was Sevrier who had cooked the dish, however, it was always sweeter because she added powdered sugar to every edible thing, no matter what, as if to compensate for the soreness in her universe. And today it happened to be she who had made the dolmas. I was at the doctor, Zalia murmured, carefully stripping the dolma off its pale green cloak. Doctors, Faride grimaced and lifted her fork in the air as if it were a baton she would use to indicate a faraway mountain range on a map, and her audience was not her own family but students in a geography class. Faride had a problem with making eye contact. She was more comfortable talking to objects. Accordingly, she addressed her words to Zaliha's plate. Haven't you seen the newspaper this morning? They operate on a 9-year-old child for appendicitis and then forget a pair of scissors inside. Do you have any idea how many doctors in this country should be put into jail for medical malpractice? Among all the Kazansky women, Faride was the one best acquainted with medical procedures. In the last 6 years, she had been diagnosed with 8 different illnesses, each of which sounded more alien than the one before. Whether it was the doctors who could not make up their minds on Faride herself industriously working on new infirmities, one could never tell. After a while, it didn't really matter one way or another. Sanity was a promised land, the Shangri-La she had been deported from as a teenager and to which she intended to return to one day. On the way there, she rested at sundry stopover that came with erratic names and dreary treatments. Even as a little girl, there was something bizarre about Faride, a most difficult student at school. She had shown no interest in anything other than physical geography classes, and in the geography classes, she had shown no interest in anything other than a few subjects, starting with the layers of the atmosphere. Her favorite topics were how the ozone was broken down in the stratosphere and the connection between surface ocean currents and atmospheric patterns. She had learned all the information she could gather on high latitude stratospheric circulation, the characteristics of the mesosphere, valley winds and sea breezes, solar cycles and tropical latitudes, and the shape and size of the earth. Everything She had memorized the school. She would then volley in the house, peppering every conversation with atmospheric information. Each time she displayed her knowledge on physical geography, she would speak with unprecedented zeal, floating high above the clouds, jumping from one atmospheric layer to the other. Then, a year after her graduation, Fariza had started to display signs of eccentricity and detachment.